You are hiding something. I know it. And when I find it, I will take my half. My wife tried to steal my inheritance by suing me for hidden assets, but a clause in our prenup stripped her of every financial benefit and left her with nothing but debt. I want to see his face when I take what is mine, she said with a smug smile, her heels echoing like gunshots on the marble floor of the bank. I didn't look up from the chair. I just kept reading the cover of a Scientific American someone had left behind. Something about entangled particles that behaved unpredictably. Poetic, really. She stormed past the security desk as if she owned the building, brandishing that court order like a queen showing off a royal decree. Her lawyer followed her, unctuous and overconfident. The kind of man who probably practiced his smug smiles in elevators. "We're here for the safety deposit box," she declared to the clerk, sliding the paper across the counter. "Authorized by the court. We'll need you to open the vault immediately." The teller glanced at the paper and then at me. I folded the magazine slowly, stood up, and took the key from my pocket. "Box 917, I said, handing it to him with the kind of calm that isn't earned. "It's built." She snatched the key from the bank officer's hand before he could even finish nodding. She turned to me and whispered just loud enough for the whole lobby to hear her. "Now it's all mine. Enjoy," I said as if I were offering her an after-dinner mint. She turned on her heel and marched toward the vault with her lawyer at her heels, already licking his lips over the billable hours this would bring him. They disappeared behind the heavy metal door with the banker. I didn't follow them. I sat back down. I already knew what was in that box. What they didn't know could fill volumes. But that box was the index. A single page would have been enough. A few minutes later, a sound echoed from the vault. The metallic click of the box drawer sliding out, followed by silence. And then there was no more silence. Her lawyer's voice, suddenly sharp, full of panic. "Don't touch anything." A pause, and then louder. I said, "Don't touch anything." People in the lobby turned. The bank officer came out first, his face pale. He went straight to the manager's desk and silently picked up the phone. "Not the police. Not yet. Internal escalation." Her lawyer stumbled out next, clutching his briefcase as if it could protect him from whatever was in that box. His tie was now crooked, sweat staining his shirt. That confidence had evaporated, replaced by something I had been waiting a long time to see. Fear. The last one to come out was her. There was no more gloating, no arrogance, just a single phrase, murmured under her breath as she passed me without meeting my eyes. "What the hell is this?" I didn't answer. I didn't have to. But if you're still here reading, stop for a second. More than 90% of people never subscribe. It takes you 2 seconds, but for us it's fuel. It keeps this channel going. Hit the button, and let's keep unraveling. Back to the bank. The lawyer approached and tried to whisper, but his voice broke. "What else do you have? What else is in there?" I looked him straight in the eye. "You open the box. You tell me." He swallowed hard. "There are documents, surveillance, images, video. This isn't just the inheritance. This is..." He stopped, looked around, lowered his voice. "Where did you get those recordings?" "Which one?" I asked. "The lunch with the notary, the conversation in the hotel lobby with the cousin, or the time she said she only married me for the estate?" He blinked, visibly calculating whether he should leave or dig deeper. "This changes things," he muttered. "Good," I said, because things needed to change. This is what they thought they were going to find. A husband hiding daddy's money in a dusty box, waiting to be outplayed. An easy win. Court order in hand. Get the loot. Negotiate hard. Walk away richer. But that's the thing about safety deposit boxes. What's inside is only dangerous when you assume it's yours. She thought she had opened a treasure chest. What she actually opened was a confessional. Not for me, for her. I just locked the door and handed her the key. 2 years earlier, my father's death didn't come with tears. It came with silence. Not because I didn't care. I just knew it was better not to cry out loud in a room where someone was already calculating how much grief could be worth per square foot. The funeral was quiet, tasteful, a handful of friends, former colleagues, and a eulogy I wrote without needing to exaggerate. My father believed in simplicity. He kept his wealth boring on paper, real estate trusts, staggered payments, corporate shields with names like Citroën Holdings, and Old Group. But if you knew where to look, really look, you would notice the dust trails from the 80s, detours to tax havens, old bearer bonds from when that still meant something, and the occasional asset that didn't exactly shine under the IRS light. He never explained it in detail, just left a spreadsheet with a locked cell and a note that said, "Only unlock if they come for you." I didn't touch it yet. No, at first she didn't care. She didn't even ask how much the estate was worth. No sudden change in how she kissed me. No questions about tax havens or successions. She just nodded when I said the lawyer would handle everything and went back to browsing profiles of skincare influencers who all somehow looked identical. But then the rumor started. A distant cousin with one too many whiskeys at the wake mumbled something about accounts in Zurich. An old colleague of my father's sent a condolence letter and accidentally mentioned the Indonesia fund. The real trigger, however, was a voicemail from a trust manager in Bermuda who called the house line by mistake while I was at work. She listened to it twice. From that moment on, she became curious. The first few weeks were innocent. "How much did your father leave you? Will you manage it directly, or will it come through the business?" Just out of curiosity, I told her the truth. Everything is in a trust. It's structured. I'm not going to touch anything directly. That wasn't the answer she wanted. She started rummaging through the drawers in my office. At first, clumsily, like a child looking for hidden candy, I'd find things slightly out of place. Papers flipped, my stapler moved. Later she got better. She searched my backups, my browsing history, my encrypted folders which she tried to crack using a sticky note that said Daniel 1234. I finally caught her with her laptop open, reviewing scanned PDFs of inheritance documents that she had somehow pulled from my cloud backup. "Looking for vacation destinations?" I asked. She slammed the laptop shut. "You don't trust me," she snapped, her eyes cold. "Trust is not necessary for an inheritance," I replied. "Patience is." She hated that answer. That night, she asked for joint control over the remaining real estate properties. "It will help simplify taxes," she said. I said no. I didn't yell. I didn't accuse her. I just said it calmly, like someone who already knew the script and had decided not to play their part anymore. She stopped sleeping in our bed after that. And that's when her campaign began, not for love, not for justice, not for reconciliation, but for access. Small, deliberate moves, feigning interest in our finances, asking about refinancing the cabin, offering to help with the lawyers handling my father's estate. When that didn't work, she got bolder. She installed a keylogger. I detected it in a matter of days. She named the installation file taxes 2022.pdf. Subtle. I confronted her, but gently. "You're digging through ashes looking for diamonds," I told her. "But I promise you what you find won't shine." Her response, "You're hiding something." "I know it. And when I find it, I'm taking my half." Then came the threat. "You think you're smarter than me, but the courts don't care who's smarter, they care what's fair." And finally, the day I was waiting for, when she left a yellow sticky note on the fridge, as if it were a casual reminder about milk. "I'm filing next week. I hope you have a good lawyer." Oh, I did, but I also had something better. I had time, a vault, and a plan she would never see until it was too late. And if you're wondering if I hated her, no. Hate consumes energy. She was just a puzzle I had already solved. I was just waiting for her to read the wrong answer out loud. The air in the courtroom was thick with ego. Her side had filled the gallery with all the usual paraphernalia, designer folders, dramatic sighs, exaggerated whispers between lawyer and client, as if they were planning the Normandy landing, not dissecting a divorce. I sat in silence, no entourage, no notepad, just me, my lawyer, and a face that didn't move. "Your Honor," her lawyer began, rising with all the smug confidence of a man who has just cornered a wounded animal. "We have reason to believe that the respondent has failed to declare physical financial assets, specifically storage containers, safety deposit boxes, and vaults that may contain undeclared funds related to the inheritance in question." He made sure to emphasize the word vaults, as if it were some kind of final punchline. He continued, "We formally request a court order compelling full access to said containers and the legal authority to search them with the respondent's cooperation." His eyes were practically glowing. My lawyer didn't flinch, didn't even bother to look up from his file. "No objections, Your Honor." The judge paused. He looked over his glasses. "You are not disputing the existence of these containers." "We are not disputing anything," my lawyer said calmly. "In fact, we are prepared to assist." That should have been her first clue. She turned to me, her lips curling. If she could have said "I got you" out loud without ruining her case, she would have. Instead, she leaned toward her lawyer and whispered something that made him smile. The judge signed the order without further argument. "It will be effective immediately," he said, handing the bailiff a signed duplicate. "You will be notified of the logistical details through your attorneys." As we stood up, I reached into my jacket and pulled out a folded piece of paper without fanfare, without hesitation. I slid it across the table to her lawyer. On it, the name of a bank, a vault number, a signature, and a key. Not a metaphorical one. A real brass key attached to a small red leather tag with the number 917 engraved on it. Her lawyer looked at it as if I had just handed him Excalibur. She peeked over his shoulder. He read it. She whispered, "That's it. So that's where he's been hiding it," her lawyer. He turned to me, arrogance returning in full force. "We'll open it on Monday," he said. I shrugged. "Just make sure you wear gloves." He chuckled as if I were bluffing. I wasn't. You know that moment in a poker game when one player bets aggressively thinking they have the winning hand, and then someone quietly calls with a flick of the wrist? This was that. They thought they were raiding a treasure chest. What they were really doing was entering a gallery I had been curating for a year and a half. She believed this was her victory, that she had outsmarted me. She didn't know that I had invited her to this very moment. I had given her just enough breadcrumbs to make her feel brilliant while I built the walls around her narrative, one asset, one clause, one surveillance camera at a time. Leaving the courthouse, I passed her in the hallway. She couldn't help herself. "I told you I'd find it," she hissed. I smiled. "You did. But finding it and surviving it are different games." She rolled her eyes and strutted away, her heels clacking like victory drums. She never noticed what I was holding in my hand. Not the vault key or papers. A small envelope, the name of her sister on it. I had been holding it like bait, and she hadn't even noticed. That was always her problem. She never asked why I didn't fight back harder. Because sometimes the best move isn't defense, it's an invitation. Back inside the vault, after the lawyer slammed the box shut as if he had just triggered a landmine, the room fell into a vacuum-like silence. He stared at the sealed drawer with his chest heaving, his lips parted like a man trying to solve a riddle seconds after realizing he is the answer. The banker was already on the phone with corporate security. Still not the police, but they were preparing for something. Not a single dollar had been touched, and yet everyone looked like they had committed a felony. "I need a moment," the lawyer said, his voice trembling, and gestured for me to step out of the vault. He followed me into the narrow hallway, the reinforced door sealing behind us with a cold hiss. He didn't speak until we were out of camera range. Then he leaned in, lowered his voice, and said, "There are surveillance photos in that box." I didn't blink. He continued, "Documents, printouts, timestamped transfer receipts, screenshots of hidden accounts, accounts under names we now have to assume are aliases." He paused, swallowed, then added, "Some in her sister's name." "Oh," I said, feigning mild surprise. "Which sister?" He didn't answer. "Also," he went on, "there's a video file. I didn't open it all the way, but I saw the preview image, and she's sitting in a car talking to someone. She says verbatim, 'I married him for the money. I'm leaving as soon as I know where it's all buried.'" And then she laughs. I granted him the favor of silence. "Why didn't you disclose this earlier?" He finally asked, as if he still hoped this could be undone with some elegant legal pirouette. "I didn't hide anything," I said. "She demanded access. The court granted it. I gave it." He narrowed his eyes. "This is entrapment." I didn't argue. "This is documentation." He looked away, his lips trembling as if trying to decide between threat and retreat. Then lower. "This is forensic grade. Multiple camera angles. The dates match the phone's GPS metadata intact. Where did you get all this?" I tilted my head. She thought she was playing chess. I built the board. Back in the lobby, she was pacing like a CEO trapped in a waiting room, still convinced this delay was procedural, not catastrophic. She didn't even look at us when we returned. Her lawyer approached her quickly, whispering in a low voice, trying to mask his panic with legal jargon, but I could see her face change. Her arms crossed, then fell. Her brow furrowed, her mouth twisted into a grimace, and then she said the phrase I had been waiting for. "You're bluffing. You have nothing." She was wrong because the something wasn't even the evidence. It was the implication, the unspoken truth that if I had that, what else might I be holding back? She thought the vault's contents would be the treasure. What she never understood was that she was the subject of the file. For over a year, I had watched, not obsessively, just methodically, a discreet subscription to a service that flagged key movement patterns when her phone left the house. A contact at a private firm specializing in digital shadows, legally gray, ethically darker. A discreet investigator with a lens the size of a matchstick head and a burner laptop. I didn't stalk her, I collected her. Every time-stamped lie, every cross-referenced alias, every documented transaction. She thought she was burying things under other names, that her cousin's wire transfer wouldn't be traced, that cash couldn't leave fingerprints, but she never understood how trusts really work. They don't grow in noise, they grow in silence. And my father, rest his soul, left me more than money. He left me the tools to survive deception, and now her entire divorce strategy had transformed into something else. A forensic confession written by her, filed by me. What's more dangerous than someone who's been lied to? Someone who never interrupted. Someone who just took notes. And believe me, I took very good notes. There was one item in the box that neither of them understood at first. A matte black envelope, thick with weight, and sealed with a wax seal no one uses anymore unless they want you to notice. Stamped in the center, clean and clear, was a name neither she nor her lawyer recognized. "Who's Gallister?" she asked, narrowing her eyes, her lip curling the way it did when she couldn't solve a crossword puzzle and assumed the paper was misprinted. Her lawyer didn't answer right away. He pulled out his phone, typed quickly, and froze. That's when her voice lost its edge. Well, she looked at me for a second, as if expecting me to offer an explanation that would let her breathe again. I didn't. He showed her the screen without a word. She frowned, scanning the bio. Retired federal prosecutor. Organized crime task force. Corporate ethics and fraud compliance now in the private sector. Based in D.C. She blinked. Why is a federal prosecutor in this? Because, I said softly, he's not in this. He's under this. The envelope wasn't addressed to me. It was retained for me. A retainer agreement signed 6 months prior, with monthly fees paid discreetly through a trust she didn't know existed. All perfectly legal, all boringly documented. And inside that envelope, a manila folder so precisely organized it made her color-coded divorce binder look like a child's drawing. The first page was a cover sheet printed in a clean serif font, asset exposure and misrepresentation patterns. Preliminary report. Underneath, a dozen tabs, each labeled by month, a complete timeline. Every withdrawal, every account opened in her sister's name, every girl's trip that coincided with cash movements and fake vendor invoices, cross-dated with hotel bookings and car rentals. One tab marked January firm event included a printed guest list and a seating chart that placed her next to a man she swore she barely knew. Her lawyer flipped through the tabs like he was trying to reverse engineer a magic trick mid-performance. The sweat on his temple said it all. This isn't just surveillance. This is a compliance case, he muttered with timelines, source validation, redacted witness statements. Correction, I said, not redacted. Sealed for now. She leaned forward, her hand trembling slightly as she turned to a section labeled admissions. And there it was, a transcript, not of a phone call, not of a voicemail, a verbatim transcript of a conversation between her and her cousin captured in a car parked 3 blocks from our house. It read, "If I make him think I'm broke, I can push him on the inheritance angle. He's slow, but careful. I'll get him, cousin. Is that legal?" She laughs not at all. She looked up at me then, her face ashen. "That's doctored." I said, "No, that's notarized." I let the silence settle, the weight of that folder pressing down on her as if gravity had doubled. And then came the last page of the file discreetly tucked at the very end. Action recommendation. Delay response until asset declaration breach is initiated. Allow court-sanctioned vault access. Advise release of sealed evidence only in the event of procedural overreach. She read it twice, then a third time. This whole thing was a setup. I said, "No. This whole thing was an audit, and you failed it." Her lawyer stepped back as if the envelope were radioactive. "Do you have any idea what you've triggered here?" He hissed. "Oh, I do." I said, "and Gallister does too. That's why his fees were paid in advance for moments exactly like this." And finally, she saw at what she had refused to see for years. This wasn't a man clinging to money. This was a man who had built a fail-safe, a pressure-activated vault that didn't release wealth, it released the truth. And now she couldn't disarm it. She couldn't explain it away. She couldn't close the box. She had started a sequence she couldn't rewind, and all I did was hand her the key. She always thought prenups were decorative, like those tiny spoons you put out for guests but never actually use. She signed ours the same way she signed gym liability waivers. Fast, distracted, already thinking about something else. I remember it clearly. We were sitting at that overpriced downtown garden restaurant, the one with the flaming cheese and the fake ivy. And she barely read a paragraph. She looked up at me, smiling. Clause 14b, she scoffed, raising an eyebrow. What is this? A spy movie is a safeguard, I said, in case one of us tries to the other using the courts. She snorted. That would never happen. I love you, silly. And just like that, she signed. Fast forward to the conference room in the present. Her lawyer's face had taken on a greenish tint as he read the copy of the prenup I had politely placed on the table between us. Not a single voice was raised. The walls were lined with books no one ever reads. The air conditioning whispered like a hospice nurse. She was now pacing with her arms crossed tightly, her voice cracking at the edges. No way I agreed to this, she snapped, jabbing the paper with her finger as if she could physically erase the words. Clause 14b. In the event of attempted fraud, conspiracy, or coercion through legal manipulation, all marital assets shall revert to the non-offending party effective upon corroboration of the breach. Her lawyer looked up, swallowed, and spoke without looking her in the eye. You signed it. No, she barked. No, I did not read that. That clause was not in the version I saw. I leaned forward, slow and calm. You saw it, you just didn't care. Remember, you said. It's not like we'll ever need it. She froze. Her breath hitched. This isn't enforceable, she blurted out. This is insane. Are you saying I get nothing? Her lawyer hesitated. It's enforceable if the clause is triggered. And based on what we saw in the box. He didn't finish the sentence because he didn't have to. You could see the panic bloom behind her eyes like a fire alarm she couldn't turn off. The kind of realization that comes too late when the wheels are already in motion and all the exits are sealed. You planned this, she said, her voice now shrill. I said no. You planned this. I just drafted the insurance. She spun on her lawyer, desperate. We can fight this, right? It's hidden in the footnotes. That's not fair. He remained silent, and then came the collapse. She sat down for the first time since this all started. She sat without threats, without performance, just a woman crumbling under the weight of her own arrogance. Because it wasn't just the clause, it was the revelation that she had built her entire case, her entire exit strategy, on the assumption that I would play defense, that I would scramble to protect assets, to compromise, maybe to offer a settlement just to get out clean. Instead, she opened a door labeled victory and walked straight into a legal trap with her name already printed on the papers. All that scheming, all those calls with her cousin, the side accounts, the staged fights to justify a narrative of emotional neglect, all of it had detonated a footnote. Clause 14b. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't insult her. I didn't even smile. I just watched her read it over and over, slower each time, as if by finding a typo the whole clause might disappear. She didn't find one because there wasn't one. And now every sheet of assets she had spent the last 6 months positioning herself to legally take was gone. Not in a burst of courtroom drama, not with a tearful monologue, but with one line signed 3 years ago on a sunny afternoon, when she thought she'd live off my father's estate and maybe trade up to someone flashier once it cleared. Turns out flashy doesn't beat legal, and a man with foresight doesn't need revenge, just a pen and a very specific clause. You were set up, her lawyer said, now defensive, desperate to find a foothold as everything crumbled. None of this proves the documents weren't planted. Anyone can fake screenshots, edit PDFs. Hell, even that video could be a deep fake. Do they expect the court to believe she just confessed in a parked car with an open mic? He looked around the room like someone expecting a nod of approval. There wasn't one. My lawyer didn't flinch. He reached calmly into his briefcase and pulled out a slim navy blue folder. It was unmarked, looked harmless, but I saw the flicker in her lawyer's eyes when he opened it and noticed the first tab. Bank surveillance. Raw match, Exhibit E. We anticipated this objection, my lawyer said dryly, so we petitioned, by subpoena for the security footage from other institutions unrelated to this box during the period our client was being surveilled. He dealt out copies across the table without flourish, without drama, just the truth on 90 GSM legal bond with timestamps that did not lie. Here we have your client entering the Redwood branch of the Est Fidelity Bank. He continued, turning the pages with surgical precision. There she is at the vault entrance. May 3rd, 10:42 a.m. Her phone was located on-site within a 10 m radius. And this part's fun. We also have 2 records showing she accessed 2 different safety deposit boxes. She has a right to use a safety deposit box. The lawyer snapped. Yes, he combined mine. Unless she's using it to conceal assets from legal disclosure or say to transfer cash to third parties in violation of a binding prenuptial clause, which brings us to the next exhibit. He turned the page. One after another, still frames, grainy, but unmistakable. Her walking into a parking garage, an envelope in her hand, a red wax seal visible even through the low resolution. Next frame. Her cousin getting out of another car, looking around nervously. They exchange the envelope. They hug. They leave in separate directions. Who is that? Her lawyer asked a little too loudly. Identified via facial recognition as Den Trevors. My lawyer replied, as if reading a weather report. Your client's cousin lives 2 counties away. No visible employment history for the past 3 years, but suddenly making recurring deposits totaling $94,000 across 4 accounts. He pointed to the timestamp. Each deposit occurred within 72 hours of your client's visits to undeclared vaults. And before you ask, yes, we have the receipts too, also notarized, also admissible in court. Her face was now unreadable, not angry, not combative, just pale, silent, diminished. Her lawyer leaned back in his seat, rubbing his face with his hands. This doesn't prove intent. My lawyer looked up, perfectly neutral. Clause 14b doesn't require intent. It only requires evidence of manipulation through concealment. The clause is triggered once concealment is corroborated. And he added casually, we have just one more clip. He turned the laptop toward them, pressed play. There she was again, grainier this time, sitting at a coffee shop in sunglasses leaning across the table toward a man we hadn't yet introduced in court. Her voice slightly distorted by the background hum, but clear enough to cut through. He's careful with passwords, but not with receipts. I've been cataloging everything I can. The prenup is ironclad, unless he breaches trust first. That's why I'm keeping my own little nest egg, just in case. She froze. No denial, no outrage, just one whispered question like a prayer. How did you find that? I didn't answer because the truth is, I hadn't gone looking for it. I just stopped trusting. And when you stop trusting someone, their patterns become visible, like bruises under a blacklight. You don't need to follow them. You just need to listen and wait. She thought she was running a con on someone too slow to notice, but I didn't need to notice. I recorded, I filed, and now the file spoke for itself. Frame by frame, ping by ping. Her lawyer sank into his chair, the fight leaving him. He tried one last thing, weak and mechanical. We'd like a recess. My lawyer nodded. Of course, though we will be filing for judicial disclosure of the full set of bank footage before we reconvene. The judge agreed. She didn't even look up because at this point it didn't matter how much she denied. The paper trail had become a map, and it didn't lead to treasure. It led straight to her. By the next hearing, her voice had changed. No more venom, no more smug declarations. She barely spoke. Her lawyer did the talking now, though even he had lost his courtroom swagger. You could see it in the way his tie had loosened, how his briefcase was now half open as if he were ready to flee. We'd like to propose a private settlement. He began carefully, his words trying to sound professional, but the defeat. My client is willing to waive any and all claims to the inheritance and associated assets. In return, we ask that no further disclosures from the vault be entered into the public record. Translation: we'll go quietly if you don't burn down the rest of the forest. I didn't answer immediately, just looked at the judge, then at the court reporter, who by now had been documenting every preview frame of her unraveling in painful legal detail. Respectfully, I said no. Her lawyer blinked. My wife filed for divorce. She initiated a public proceeding. Her claim was that I had hidden marital assets and that she deserved half. I leaned forward. So let's give her half. The room went silent. I want everything disclosed, I said publicly. On the record. She can explain how all of this came to be. Line by line, her lawyer's mouth opened. It closed, then the tremor came. He has no comment, he said quickly. The judge, who had been watching all of this unfold like someone watching a train approach a wall, finally spoke. The motion for a closed proceeding is denied. This matter was brought under suspicion of fraud and asset concealment. The public has a right to transparency in such matters. The hearings will remain open. That's when she started shaking. At first it was subtle, a twitch in her fingers as if she were cold. Then her foot started tapping uncontrollably under the table. Her lawyer leaned in, whispering urgently, but she wasn't listening. She was staring straight ahead, her gaze unfocused, because she knew what was coming next. Not just losing, but losing publicly. Within days, the first story broke. A small legal blog ran an anonymous feature about a spouse trying to defraud their own prenup and fabricate a false financial narrative. It didn't name her, but people in the know quickly. A few lines from a transcript anonymously posted on a forum mentioned her cousin's name. That was enough for anyone in our circle to connect the dots. Then came the whispers. A friend from her yoga class texted her, "I just saw something about you online. Is it true?" Then silence. One by one, her friends vanished. The group chat she used to dominate went cold. The invitations dried up. The lunches she used to host were now held without her, and no one pretended otherwise. But the worst part, her family. Her mother called me. "Is it true?" she asked, her voice brittle. "Did she really try to steal from you?" I didn't answer directly, just said, "You should ask her." That same day, her brother, who once begged me to help him refinance his house, sent a text. "Don't bring me into this. I have kids." Cowardice always shows up when reputations start to bleed. The next hearing drew press. Not a crowd. Not yet, but a few local outlets showed up, taking quiet notes. An independent journalist tweeted about the case without names, just a few hints. Ex-wife of former tech exec implodes in court over hidden prenup clause. Trust the quiet ones. It got traction. She saw it. And that's when I knew the real loss hadn't even started yet. It wasn't about the money anymore, or the house, or the trust. It was her identity, her public mask peeling away in real time. She used to walk into rooms and light them up. Now she was the reason people dimmed the lights. And all because she thought I was hiding treasure in a box. She didn't know the box was just a mirror, and now everyone could see what was reflected in it. The judgment was handed down on a Thursday. Dry, clinical language printed on white linen paper with gold letterheads that did nothing to soften the blow. Plaintiff's petitions dismissed. Defendant's assets retained in full. Clause 14 be upheld. She didn't show for the verdict. She sat in a car outside the courthouse, staring through the windshield as if it owed her an apology. Her lawyer, now visibly wilting under the weight of his own decisions, came out alone, tugging at his collar as if the air had gotten thicker. He didn't even look at the reporters, just muttered no comment and got into a taxi. As for me, I walked out with a copy of the ruling and exactly zero joy, because this was not about joy. This was closure with a scalpel. Shortly after, the court finalized the division of assets, or more accurately, the lack of division. I kept the house, the lake property, the holding company, the income shares, the remainder of my father's trust, and the structured funds that fed it. She kept her car, a 2018 Audi I paid for 3 years ago, and debt lots of it. Her own legal fees were just the beginning. The forensic audits dug up undeclared credit cards, loans in her sister's name, and small investment experiments she had made without telling anyone using my tax ID number. All under review now. But that wasn't the worst part, because the envelope, the one addressed to Gal Lister, retired federal prosecutor and ethics consultant, that chain reaction hadn't stopped at the courthouse. Gal Lister, methodical to the core, had filed a formal inquiry with the district's white-collar crime division. Not dramatically, no TV moments, just a folder delivered with a signature and a polite cover letter. Evidence suggests a calculated attempt to defraud the legal system through falsified financial declarations and strategic asset obfuscation. A review under Sections 203 and 410 of the State Financial Code is recommended. 3 weeks later, I got the call. She had been indicted. 2 counts, attempted fraud and false statements under oath. Not felonies yet, but serious enough to trigger financial audits, travel restrictions, and a requirement to turn over digital devices for forensic review. When she found out, she tried to call me blocked, so she called her lawyer. He refused to represent her further, filing a motion to withdraw due to ethical conflicts and irreconcilable case management direction. Translation: she's radioactive now. You could feel the shift. People she used to intimidate now kept a polite distance. The barista at her favorite coffee shop forgot her order twice. Her hairstylist canceled indefinitely. Mutual friends started calling me. Some to apologize, others to confess. They had always suspected. She didn't just lose the case, she lost the narrative. No more carefully curated Instagram captions about resilience and finding herself. Now she was that woman, the one who tried to grift a prenup, was outplayed in court, and might face jail time for her own signatures. What made it worse? She couldn't blame me. Not really. I never yelled, never retaliated publicly, never smeared her name. All I did was hand her a rope. She tied the noose. She kicked the stool, and I documented the fall. This wasn't revenge, it was chess. And she had mistaken herself for the queen. But queens don't get cornered by pawns. They get checkmated by players who knew the board from the beginning. She showed up on a Wednesday, her hair pulled back in a tight ponytail, no makeup, oversized sunglasses that no longer belonged on her face. The banker recognized her. How could he not? Her meltdown 2 months prior was still whispered about in staff meetings. She spoke quietly this time. No brandishing of court orders, no smirking lawyer by her side, just a single request. I want to see the contents of the vault again. Alone. The banker looked at her, hesitated, then nodded. You'll be supervised. She didn't argue. He led her down the hall, the same sterile hallway she had once strutted down in heels like jackhammers. When she thought the vault held her golden ticket, now her footsteps barely made a sound. Inside the small vault chamber, the officer opened the drawer with the same key she once snatched from my hand like a winning lottery number. The lid creaked open, exposing all the quiet violence that had shattered her life. Stacks of indexed documents, time-stamped images, certified transcripts, a hard drive labeled statement repository, everything that had turned the tide. But that's not what she had come for. She rummaged through the files like someone looking for a picture of themselves in a house fire. And then she saw it at the bottom, a cream-colored folder of heavier stock paper with a handwritten label in personal cursive, no tab numbers, no notary seals, just her name in my handwriting. She opened it with trembling hands. Inside, the first thing she saw was a photo. Us on our wedding day. She was laughing. One of the few real laughs. Unfiltered, uncalculated, just her in the moment. Head thrown back, my arm around her waist. The kind of photo you frame. We never did. Underneath a receipt, the signed, dated, notarized prenup. The same table, the same pen, her initials in the margin next to Clause 14b. She had drawn a tiny heart next to her signature, as if it were something cute. At the very back of the folder, a single sheet of paper, handwritten, no letterhead, no signature, just one sentence. You wanted what was mine. I only protected what was never yours. She didn't move for a long time. She didn't speak. The banker watched through the glass wall, arms crossed, his expression unreadable. Finally, she sat down. She just sat. A woman who once built an entire identity on appearances, now reduced to silence by 8 words written in blue ink. She cried, not loudly, not for attention, just small, crumbling tears, the kind that don't ask for comfort because they know they don't deserve it. There was no rage left, no escape, no audience, because this was not a defeat inflicted by force, it was containment. She thought I had ruined her, but I hadn't. I had simply held the door open and let her walk into the truth she wrote herself. And the final irony. I never changed the box, never added that folder after the fallout. It had been there the whole time, waiting, because long before she filed the lawsuit, long before she lied, long before she laughed at Clause 14b and told her cousin she'd bleed me dry, I already knew. I knew what kind of ending she would write for herself. All I did was preserve it and hand her the key.